up, everybody? Thank you for making it to another great episode of Rugby 2Night. My name is GiftTime and this is where we get the chance to talk about what's going on in rugby today. It's going to be a lit one tonight. We have a great show for you. Dallen Stanford, the voice of USA Rugby, will be with us. But first, college rugby. College rugby has been one of the centerpieces of the U.S. rugby community for almost a century now. And it's easily the largest rugby community that we have available to us. And as we begin to grow in this bubble of professional rugby that is starting to build, college rugby component becomes even more and more important. This week, the MLR, or Major League Rugby, announced that they made a partnership deal with the Red River Collegiate Rugby Conference. Now, if you don't know where the Red River Collegiate Rugby Conference is, it is made up of 9 teams from 4 states, predominantly most of them in Texas. It's made up of teams from, it's made up of University of Oklahoma, University of Arkansas, LSU, go Tigers, University of Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Christian University, Baylor, Texas Tech, and University of Houston. Now, the MLR is looking to provide player development and opportunities for the upcoming players. Also wanted to give them internship opportunities and work with athletes to get them sports business education. You know, in short, it looks like the MLR is trying to get some cheap labor. What? No. I mean, look, you know, in reality, you know, it's really a great idea. The MLR actually has 2 teams that are located in Texas. You have the Houston Strikers and you have the Austin Elite. Yes, the Austin Elite. Are they the Huns? The Austin Elite. These name changes, they get us all the time. And honestly, it's never a bad idea to start working with your professional where you're going to be feeding from, because most of these professional teams are going to be feeding from their most of their professional teams are going to be feeding from their college and, you know, upper level club teams. Also, you know, it's never a bad idea for early players to learn who's going to be treating them like pieces of products. Learn how to be objectified from the very source that you're going to be objectified by. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Moving on from there, Pro Rugby, Guinness Pro Rugby, Guinness Pro 14 has been making their intentions very clear about wanting to bring a franchise to the Americas. Now, this has been one of the worst kept secrets in the U.S. rugby community. I think we've been talking about the interest of bringing a team to Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and our ghetto in chief out there. And obviously the connection with Will Chang being one of these components. Guinness Pro 14 executive Martin Anayi said that when it comes to taking games to America, we have to innovate. The English got a great thing going on in Philadelphia, and it will go really well. How do we play to our strength as a Celtic nation with huge diaspora, Italian and South Africa around the world? What are the key markets to becoming global? Mr. Anaya, I need you to come in close to the screen because I got the secret to you. The secret is, remember that there are more than 3 cultures in the Americas. If you're able to actually interact with anybody outside of the Celtic region, the Italians, and South Africans, I'm pretty confident you're going to do a pretty good job in trying to attach and build your global brand. I mean, look, you know, it's not as if we have other sports here in the U.S. that happen to have a international presence. I mean, God, who could we borrow any ideas from? Basketball, soccer, maybe a little bit of the American football, but as long as you're only dealing with England and Canada and like one little part of Mexico. But it's obvious you need to focus on more than just what your demographics. Even the concept of saying that the Premiership rugby is doing good in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is one city in one region, one part of one region of this country. A country made of 350 million people. So to think that you are only going to focus like it is with other countries where you can focus within a small demographics, more likely than not fairly monolithic demographic, and you're going to be dealing with only a few cultures within a limited population that might be equivalent to the size of one of our cities. It's not exactly going to work to try and get the rest of the country. Like the West Coast isn't going to care because you're dealing with DC. Like look at the Washington Redskins. People still don't even care about them, and they've been around since the beginning of football. So that lets you know, I got you, Mr. Anai. I got you. Not a problem at all. Now, as we continue moving in, and it goes into the continued build towards the professional bubble here in the U.S. What professional rugby teams are going to end up coming out? Which ones are going to collapse? But it's funny, not everybody has high hopes for where rugby and the monetization of rugby. Why am I using these big words? Where the revenue building of rugby can actually be. We had Edward Griffith, a former chief executive for the Premiership rugby team, the Saracens, who will be playing this weekend against the Newcastle Falcons. So in case you guys did not know, now you know. And he was an executive for the South African Rugby Union, didn't fully buy the idea of playing these isolated games in the U.S. His belief is in the concept that it might provide a breadth of opportunity for the game, increase the range of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to develop the game anymore. And he said, rugby in America, to me, looks like a collection of individuals and companies looking to make a quick buck out of what they perceive as a growing game. No one is actually prepared to do the hard yards and build the structure of the game. It's all very fragmented short term. Until that changes, I can't see much development in that market. Really? The U.S. market is about quick money. Man, 2008 is calling you. Thank you for that revelation. The key is it's not so much about it being a quick market game. It's about the fact that you have to be able to facilitate and show a chance to be able to build revenue in a very massively quick way, because we have, to be honest, quite a few major sports that happen to be running things here. I mean, rugby at its best is running on a couple tens of millions of dollars when it comes to salary cap and revenue generation, as opposed to football, $9 billion, basketball, $5 billion, college football, that's another multi-billion-dollar sport, hockey, low billions, high 100 million sport, baseball, multi-billion-dollar sport. So whenever it comes to rugby, yeah, you gotta think in the short term. You kind of have to, because you have to make a mark as quickly as possible. So while it doesn't seem like there's a means to develop, you have to do these small things, because you will be forgotten so quickly, especially as an international game. It's either you guys wanting to try and slowly build the gamut like soccer and hope that over the course of 40 years, people will slowly begin to care, despite the fact of having one side of your sport doing well but not being paid and not getting real recognition, and then the other side being horribly mediocre with maybe chance that we can do something. So yeah, no, it has to be one of those, hey, build it quickly, find a way to borrow from any one of these major sports that we have and that have learned. I mean, look at something like the UFC, something that went from completely outlawed to a few rule changes and is about to be one of the biggest combat sports in the world, taking over the reigning champ in boxing. So yeah, move fast. Don't be a little punk about not wanting to do. You have to take the risks. For a guy who's been known for innovation in South Africa and known for innovation with the Saracens, you're mighty scared to try and do some old-fashioned innovation and understanding of what the sports market is. Again, we don't deal with small markets. You got to do it big or go home. Be flashy or go home. And lastly, man, it was announced the Olympics are coming to Los Angeles in 2028. I will be 42, and that is the weirdest feeling in the world to know that that is actually a real thing. That is so weird for me. But we can't help but be happy. That's great for rugby if we're still around. But the only thing that sucks about it seems like California might not be there. With all the coastal erosion and climate changes that are happening, we might not have an LA as we know it in 2028. But for what it's worth, it probably will help the traffic out a little bit. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we'll be right back.
There you go. Oh. Yeah. You just bent him in half, Carl.
Welcome back, everybody. It is great. We got a great guest for you tonight. One half of the famous rugby commentators, one of the slickest of the slick when it comes to verbal wordsmithery on the commentator booth, the voice of USA Rugby. I think you guys might recognize this guy.
Hi, I'm Dallen Stanford of the Rugby Commentators.
Oh, like a scrambled egg! Straight through, dancing around. Look at him. More moves than Ricky Martin. Barmasuli, like a rattlesnake, he strikes.
Dallen Stanford. Dallen, man, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, you sleek sensation.
Yes, indeed. Well, look, I'm going to just jump right into it. We've been talking about the Premiership Rugby kicking off for the last, several months now, and we're almost to that time. This weekend we have Premiership Rugby happening, but you've been trying to push this Premiership Rugby scholarship. Can you tell us a little bit what's going on with this? What's the scholarship?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. So, the idea behind the American series is what it's called, is that the Premiership Rugby has partnered with AEG Rugby, and Dan Lyle's the man behind AEG Rugby to get that involved, and also working with NBC Sports, working with USA Rugby, and then we got involved as well. So a new role that I've taken as a consultant is working with Friends of the British Council. And they're a non-profit that works with British brands in the US and helping the US British relationship. So I've come on as the sports partnership director, and part of that kind of cool role is working with with Premiership Rugby. And so we sat down with them a while ago when they came to visit and said, okay, you're doing these games for the next 4 years in America, but what else would you like to do on the ground that could leave a bit of a legacy, that could help us as American rugby players and the community here with your expertise? And they've done projects all over the world, have the British Council, but as have Premiership Rugby. And so one of the ideas we came up with was, well, if you have all the expertise with one of the best leagues in the world, why don't we send our coaches and our players to experience that in the UK? It's not something you can do. I can't go online and buy a trip to England and go visit Saracens for a week and kind of see how they train and speak to their coaches and things like that. So this unique opportunity came about a few months ago, and so we're a little bit late to the game because the match is obviously coming up this week. But the scholarships are happening, and it's basically going to be 10 female rugby players aged 17 and 18 as of September 1st this year, 10 male rugby players aged 17, 18, and then 10 coaches. The nice thing is that people can apply from anywhere around the country. So it's not just, the East Coast corridor, and that's the one thing which people have said in the past that, wow, this is great. There's a game happening in Philadelphia. Well, I live in Hawaii, or I live in Los Angeles. I can't get there. So that's fine. You can still submit a video online and get chosen to go over to England next year. So these 30 winners will be announced this Saturday at halftime of the game on the big screen. And then, of course, we'll do a social media blast, and they'll get to experience an all-expenses trip paid to go to Premiership in probably the spring of 2018. Those details will be finalized, but what a great chance to go and experience something from the best,
Absolutely. Whenever it initially happened, I'm still always wondering exactly what the interest for the Premiership Rugby is. I mean, obviously there's always a commercial side that goes along with it, but you always want to know, what is that next level? Because sometimes it feels like there's such an interest to try and grab a piece of this American market that you're almost like, oh, we're just, a product to you. Where's the emotional attachment that goes along with this? Versus, now it feels like they're actually trying to add something to it, at least to be able to give something back so that there's something to offer. For you, whenever you see something like this American series, what is it that you feel is the benefit that goes to the U.S.? Or more importantly, what do you think the benefit is for the Premiership and for the British Council?
Yeah, exactly. So the two sides to it, you're right. So if I look at the point of view from the overseas entity coming in, there obviously, as you said, there have been tremendous interest, especially since the All Blacks and Ireland sold out Soldier Field. People saw that and they were like, wow, there is a big market for rugby. But what they didn't understand was that it's the All Blacks, it's the best rugby team in the world, and they're such a recognizable brand. They could go anywhere and sell out, right? So that I think is a little bit misleading, I think, if you're an overseas entity. But what there really is in America is that there is a strong community of people involved in rugby all over. And so while the competitiveness might not be there like something like England, right? Their leagues are very competitive because they've been professional. We don't have that here yet. So I think it has to start with overseas interest coming here, but as you said, looking at both the interests of their organization as well as the local community. So Premiership are doing that, which is great, because before, as an American citizen and as somebody actively involved in the community, that's something that is a red flag. Somebody coming in and trying to capitalize on, the sleeping giant, if you will, and trying to financially, gain something from it here. But that's not the case. It's a 4-year long-term partnership, and they'll extend that afterwards. Yes, their goal is obviously increase their fan base for sure, but how do you increase a fan base? You offer something unique in return. And so the coaching clinics we just did in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, every single coach I spoke to afterwards, they were like, wow, this is fantastic. If they can come more often, that would benefit me. I'll be able to coach at a better level. My kids and my players will benefit the most out of that kind of experience. So those kind of things are really exciting, and that's why this is a partnership. And in terms of the Friends of British Council, for us, it's great to be able to send young people as well as coaches to get to experience something in the United Kingdom, to get to experience the culture, to make new friends there, and to have something different. I think a lot of us love the game of rugby, and that's amazing. But if you get a chance to be able to take that overseas or somewhere else, those are where you really learn the life lessons and opens up your world. I remember as a 12-year-old South African playing rugby in Cape Town, I got a chance to go to Italy. I got a chance to go to Italy as a 12-year-old rugby player, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I got on the international flight for the first time. It was just such an eye-opener. And to this day, I still have fond memories of them. I've kept in touch with a lot of people on that trip. And then you host the Italians coming to South Africa, right? So that's the same thing here. We're looking for that exchange to have English folks come here and us to go there.
And you know what? I love that. And I've been a big believer in trying to promote the idea of traveling, because I think that is one of the big benefits that you have as being a rugby person. Like, whether you're a spectator, whether you are an athlete, or whether you're just simply a rugby associate, the idea of being able to move your passion for the sport in whatever facet to a different culture, and know that you're going to have at least a similar ideal when it comes to that, I think is absolutely huge. And so to be able to now just say, okay, let's maybe take it younger. Let's maybe actually teach them something. Maybe they can have a little bit of fun. That might not be so bad to be able to work with on that. And for you, as a South African, you've had the chance to not only just watch the game from a homeland standpoint, you've been able to play within the game. You've now had a chance to be to coach, and then subsequently now be on the media side and just have a full-on force set of the game. How do you feel that here in the States it's been developing? Like, we all know. Let me elaborate. We all know that it is. We see growth in terms of play. That's obvious. Women's World Cup, Rugby World Cup taught us that. We can see it in the Olympics, whatever. But when it comes to the overall facilitation of rugby, I mean from a business side to a culture side down to a youth growth side, how have you felt it has developed, and where do you think it can go?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I came here about 13 years ago to the US, and part of that international flavor you speak of, I just came with a pair of rugby boots, and I knew one person in Los Angeles. I got connected with a rugby club, and then the great community aspect is alive everywhere, and that's the thing. While the game may change in terms of the level and the conditions and things like that, the community is still there. So straight away, I had 30 people that became friends. Somebody gave me an old car to drive around in LA. Someone gave me accommodation. Someone offered me a job. And so that was unique and amazing. And the first time I'd experienced that from a player's side, coming into a new community, because I've always, we've had people come to South Africa and we've been overjoyed to have them with us and show them around and that sort of thing. So from that point, it was amazing and remarkable. And that was 13 years ago. And then since then, getting involved in the community from the youth side, it really, the great thing about the sport of rugby, which I would say this is unique to America, is that there aren't many other sports that compare to it. And so people haven't had that experience. So while they may have tried American football and realized that, well, the quarterback is a fun position, but there's only one of them in the game, or they played basketball, other kind of sports, rugby is so unique. So they're like, what do you mean I can run with it and anybody can score? It's like, yeah, anybody can run with it, anybody can score, but you must play defense as well. So you can't just leave the field. You have to stay on the whole time. So people are, it's kind of a great hybrid game that Americans, obviously, when anybody picks it up for the first time, they love it. And they look at me and they're like, well, firstly, you sound different, you look different to us, and what's this football you're carrying around? It looks a little different. I'm like, well, it's not football, it's called rugby, and they don't even know what that is. So that's great. And within 5 minutes of throwing the ball around, we have a water break, and they're like, man, this is one of the best games I've ever played in my life. So that kind of keenness to get involved is so great, and I think that's one of the reasons why the youth game, the game is exploding and growing. In terms of an organizational point of view, then we face so many challenges, right? So even when Premiership were here, they're like, well, how do we do a road trip around the country without spending the whole year driving around? It's not something you can just get to in 2 hours. So the structure is going to be difficult in terms of having the governing body or anybody set things up nationally because of the geographical setup. So that is a challenge. I think that's something ongoing that's going to have to be looked at. As a commentator, I see rugby teams that struggle to travel places because financially it's very expensive. So if you have a league and you've got to travel 5 or 6 times, to a foreign place, that gets very expensive. And so those kind of challenges, I think how we will overcome those is when rugby becomes even bigger than it is now in the States and there's more commercial interest. As soon as there is, that will certainly help. For example, AIG are one of the sponsors of the All Blacks. They give them 20 times more money than they would our US team. Now, I understand why, because the All Blacks are the most recognizable brand in the world, but at the same time, we have tons of companies the size of AIG here in the US that could help and partner. And I know that's growing and expanding, especially with the Women's World Cup doing so brilliantly. That was so exciting to see. The women's sevens, the men's sevens, those are really things that, as Americans, you have to be the best, or at least the top. You can't be playing in a competition and losing that many games, so that's why when the Olympics comes around, it's important that our rugby team does very well. And initially we were all just like, well, that's fine, just take part and it'll be good enough, because that is the Olympic creed. But to be fair, American fans, they want to see their team winning, so I think that will certainly help the commercial side of things, But in terms of playing wise and things like that, the level has increased tremendously. The current crop of players that have come through the system have now played for a longer period of time than before, and that's exciting. I think that's a huge thing. When I coached at college level, it was a bit of a nightmare at first, right? So I arrive at practice, and there I am. I'm like, cool, I'm going to coach this college team. We're ready to go. We've got 30 people. That's awesome. And so I said, okay, well, so who's got rugby experience or how long you played for? Well, I soon found out that 20 of the players had played for maybe a year or two, and 10 had never touched a rugby ball in their life, and they just came out to see what it was. So now I'm sitting there as one coach in the home team going, okay, well, how do I introduce the game to 10 people at the same time as lifting the level of the other 20? It was a cluster, and as a coach, it's like, okay, I'm not going to worry on the complicated moves now. I just need to get them playing the game, So it was exciting and great, and definitely a different situation to be in.
Yeah, and I love that you can see where the differences come, because that was always a big complaint that even whenever I started, because I've only been at this since 09, 08. I've known about it, but I only actively participated in it since 09. So, there's a much shorter range that I have to be able to work with to see it. But whenever you've had a chance and you hear from, veteran rugby guys like yourself, and we hear about, people coming in and not having any idea how to play or not having any idea what it is. And they come in and you're just like, oh, this was kind of nice. And then you're like trying to develop them up. It's nice to see that we're kind of getting to a point where it's not needing to start from that point from everybody on the team. There seems to be more and more of those guys who have like, oh yeah, my dad used to play, my mom used to play, one of my buddies played. Oh yeah, I've seen it a little bit, but I didn't know. I'm slowly getting less of is that the one with the sticks? Still at a strong 90%, but it's dropped from 95.
Yes, correct. And then traveling around, the cool thing is that I see a lot of people wearing rugby shirts. I see them wearing, I'm like, oh cool, you're wearing an Ireland shirt, and they're like, oh yeah, I got this from a friend that loves rugby. So like people are starting to talk about it. They know it a bit better. And then as you said, your point. Kids are picking up the game at a younger age, and that is a real success of all the youth programs out there. I know US Rugby has their Rookie Rugby initiative. There's programs like ICEF in Los Angeles that do a brilliant job with the young kids, Play Rugby USA. But then a ton of local parents that are just like, well, now my kid's into this new sport called rugby. I need to be the coach, right? I got to be the coach. So then they go to the training and they love the game, and their passion is just amazing.
Man. So, for you, as you've gotten a chance to see something like Rugby Town Sevens, obviously you and Dan Power are super mainstays there. That's your guys' stamp on the U.S. rugby world. Whenever you have an event like that, or whether it's another USA Test match, what is it for those people who aren't rugby participants, who can't, as in that they don't play, but to be able to bring in more spectators? What is it that you tell them whenever you're saying, hey, you know what, you need to come check this out? And obviously you having this deep experience, you guys need to come check this out. What is your pitch, elevator pitch, to bring them in?
Yeah, that's a great one, actually. Well, the nice thing is whenever I talk to people about rugby, generally, as we just said, they are like, oh yeah, like what's that again? That's the crazy game and things like that. So when I'm in a city and people are nearby, at the grocery store, wherever, I'm like, you should come and have a look and see what it is. And most of the time they're like, absolutely. I'd like to come and see what it is. I don't know what it is, but I'll get there. And I know that when they're there, and I said to them, just ask anybody next to you what's going on, and they would love to help you out and explain it. They're like, oh, okay, cool. So there's been times where, in between a game that I'm resting, commentating, if it's a sevens tournament, there's a bit of a break. So you go stand next to people, and someone's like, oh, well, what did they do just there? And then that's a perfect time for you as somebody that knows a bit about the game to educate them and explain a little bit more about it. Because you can just feed a few nugget sizes. Before I used to be like, well, this is a scrum and this is how tackling works. That's too much information, right? So just small little piece of information that they're like, okay, I get why they're doing a scrum, why there's a lineup, just ways to restart the game, and somebody will try grab the ball and get it back, and things like that. So you're right. So nugget sizes. Now, some people are doing a very good job. So Infinity Park, Glendale, the Merlins now, as they're called, the Merlins and the Raptors are doing a very, very good job about having people hand out Rugby 101 information sheets, which has just brief explanations of what's going on. And then they play videos inside the Jumbotron. So in between a game, there'll be a 30-second thing saying, this is a kickoff and this is how it works. This is a line out and these are the basics. So just a very brief explanation of kind of what it is. So if you're new to the game, you can go, oh, okay, I understand it a bit better, And so I think that certainly helps, But the elevator pitch, I mean, because you and I and people involved are so passionate about the game that everybody we speak to are like, wow, okay, yeah, I need to check this out, Like, what, it's in the Olympic Games? Are there scholarships for female and male players? Oh, this is a legitimate thing. Before, they thought, oh, it's just a hooligans game and you guys drink a lot. But it's obviously changed the last 20 years.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that actually makes perfect. That's exactly it. It's always been, can we take it away from that, like, Chris Farley from Tommy Boy kind of situation, and then making sure we're not over inundating, because I know it's so easy to get so excited about it and just go, oh man, so this is what happens, and you remember, and then I remember even when I was starting, people would start to go down like the history of rugby, and I'm not even talking about like history of from the rugby school. I'm talking about like we're naming players overseas, and we already know it's already difficult to be able to pronounce a lot of these names, let alone like tell me these things off like a checklist. I don't even remember what they just said afterwards. I'm just like, so was that a penalty? And that was all I was asking. That's all I was asking.
Exactly. You're totally right.
But Dallen, man, I want to say thank you so much for being on. We're excited for this. What is it that you'd love to let people know when it comes to this game coming up?
Yes, absolutely. So for this match, if you can't attend the game, please have a look and watch it out on NBC Sports. So have a look, because it's very important that the American community get behind these ventures, because in the end, they're going to benefit everybody in the long run. Initially, it's obviously the game is here in Philadelphia, but they're looking to change it every year. So that's the exciting thing, I will say. So it's going to move around. So if you can watch the game, it's 5:45 actually will be the kickoff time, Eastern time, and NBC Sports will have it. You can check it out. And then the other thing is with the community things. If you have a rugby team and you're desperate for higher coach education, you're looking to send players overseas, things like that, we want to get involved. As Friends of the British Council, we would like to help the rugby community as well as our partners and create those things happen. So it's a long-term deal. That's very important, because people are like, oh, what is happening? They're just coming here and taking things. No, it's a long-term deal, and I'm one of the people on the ground, along with AEG and USA Rugby and things like that are trying to help the overseas entities like Premiership Rugby do great things here in the community and have a lasting effect. Awesome.
Dallen, thank you so much, man.
Hey, it's absolute pleasure. You're the man. Keep it going. And I want to see some of your dancing later, all right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dallen. That was excellent. Guys, we're going to have the link posted in the description for the Premiership Rugby Scholarship, and just to find out more information from the Friends of the British Council. But that's all we have for tonight. You guys go to our website, gifttimerugby.com. We got a new online store. Go check it out. Otherwise, please like our page on Facebook. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We want to thank our partners, Believe Sports USA, providing us with the shirts. Also want to thank Dallen again for being our guest. Let me know music is by Michael Armstead. Guys, I hope you guys have a great night. You guys continue living the rugby life. My name is GiftTime and Bailu, and we're out.